There are two kinds of people in this world. The people who fail to do what they know they should, and those who keep doing things they know they shouldn't. Guess what? You're both. Hi, I'm your host, life and business coach, Marcy Barker, aka your loving kick in the pants. In this podcast, I'll teach you the 6 steps of my accountability code that will help you wake up with clarity and show up with aligned action steps that make follow through easy and peaceful. All right, let's jump in. Good morning, my beautiful people. I am so excited for this episode because this is a common question or concern that happens a lot, and that is self-accountability. That's right. How do you keep yourself on track? Because my nickname, your loving kick in the pants, was born out of people struggling to hold themselves accountable. So today in this episode, I'm going to give you some different tips and strategies that will help you develop this accountability. And I'm also going to recommend different stories in my book and my workbook to help you work through these things if you need to go a little bit deeper on your own. Okay? First off, the reason why people have a hard time holding themselves accountable is because we're human. Now, you're probably listening to that and being like, well, great, there's nothing I can do about it. However, we all know there's different levels of accountability, and we go through phases where we're really strong, and then other times where we're just like, we're just going to sit on the couch today and nothing's going to happen. And I have those days as well. And the beautiful thing about learning self-accountability or self-mastery of accountability is that you are the only one who gets to decide if that's happening or not. Yes, you're going to have other people look at you and think, okay, you're not doing what you said you would, or you're not doing what I want you to, or you're not doing the things I told you to do. But really, self-accountability is aligning your mind and your body so that you are at peace and you feel good with who you are. And my goal as a life and business coach is for you to always look in the mirror and be satisfied with what you see. That doesn't mean being perfect. It means that you can look past your eyes and you see into who you really are, and you can say, you know what, I'm doing a pretty good job. And at the end of the day, that's the kind of satisfaction that keeps us in a space of health and wealth and happiness. And that's what I want for all of you. All right, so let's dive in. The challenges of self-accountability, okay? Let me just tell you right now, you're going to hear some of these and be like, yeah, that totally applies to me. And other stuff, you're going to be like, no, that doesn't apply to me. Because as you work through trying to be accountable, you're going to find that the more often you practice these things, the less problems you're going to have. Now, I'm not saying that you can reach a level of perfection where you're not going to have any problems, but if you learn how to overcome a couple of things that are always holding you back, that's the whole goal, right? Is to be able to say this thing doesn't hold me back anymore, and now I'm functioning at this higher level that I wasn't doing before. Okay? So there's 4 points I want to talk about when it comes to what really is the problem, okay? First one is juggling multiple responsibilities and tasks. Now, this one can be somewhat out of your control. However, when you look at all of the things on your plate, I want you to ask yourself if those were self-inflicted, okay? I was on a call with a client who is coming to my next retreat, and she wants to grow her audience. She wants to grow her business. And I said, what are some of the things you're doing to expand your audience? And she said, well, I signed up for the PTA so I could get to know people. And I also signed up to volunteer at church. And I did a face palm because I've been there before. And I told her, I said, you can still create connections without added commitments, okay? So look at your plate and say, did I sign up for something and it just made my life harder? Or is there a way I can tweak things so that I get what I want without the extra responsibility, okay? Second one, struggling with procrastination and distractions. This one we're going to dive a little bit more into because distraction is probably one of the most common problems. And that's because that's the world we live in now. There are literally things pulling at you every which way. And we live in a world where multitasking has been made simple, but it doesn't mean that it's great for us. All right, number 3, losing motivation over time. This one is especially challenging for women because if you know anything about your cycle, which I hope you do, but a lot of women are misinformed and just never educated about their cycle. During a month's period, we have times of the month where we are so motivated and full of energy and optimistic. And then there's other times where we just need to sit in bed and take care of ourselves, slow down, relax, and decompress. So losing motivation over time, I want you to recognize that there are different phases you can work in to support your body's natural function. But that doesn't mean it doesn't hold us back and kind of make us feel like we're not being accountable to the things that we committed to. The last one, which I think is the most important, and this is what I help most of my clients with very easily, is they set the wrong goal. Okay, it is really hard to be accountable to something that you don't really want and you don't really care to do. As we talk about self-mastery and self-accountability, I want you to recognize that you have a lot of power in the direction that you move in. And as you become more aligned, then your ability to follow through is going to be easy. It's going to be so much more easy than what you've been doing to yourself. The reason why we have to learn to tackle this thing is because life is going to come at you. And if you are constantly in a state of, you feel like you're failing, you feel like you're unproductive, then you're going to give up on your goals altogether. And hopefully you are not in that state right now, but I want you to know, like, I've had people work with me because they wanted to start a business. They had really big dreams and goals. And then it got down to the nitty gritty and they're like, never mind. Like, I don't really want to do this. And it's not saying that they're not being accountable. It's just that they haven't figured out what that level of accountability is for them. And this skill is imperative to you living a happy life that is more stress-free than what you might be used to. Also, we want to be accountable because there's so many things in life we just have to get done. Like me school shopping for 4 kids, that's not enjoyable. That's not something that I want to do. So sometimes I just have to power through it and get it done anyway. And the cool part about developing self-accountability is that when those non-negotiable things come up, you're like, I know how to do this. I can push through it and it's going to be easier for me because I'm used to doing this thing. That's kind of how I describe. I've described this to people who have never had a baby. I just would tell moms having a baby is just like a workout, a really big workout. So during your pregnancy, if you work out and you're used to working out, then, delivery is nothing big. But the same is true with self-accountability. If you're used to taking control of your own life, then when big things happen, you're like, it's just another day in the life. And it can be simple. The other reason why self-accountability is important is because we need those wins. If you are feeling like you're not getting anything done, then you start to look at yourself as somebody who is not capable and not trustworthy and not able to do the things that you want to in life. And I kind of just spoiled it. I would say the worst part about not being accountable is you just don't trust yourself anymore. And in my opinion, that's just the worst thing you could do, is to look in the mirror and not even know who you are. And I don't enjoy seeing that for my friends, my family, and my clients. And if I had any wish in the world, it would be that you could look at yourself and be like, I'm doing really great. But nobody can create that for you. You've got to do it. All right. So now that we've talked about what we want to accomplish and the reason why it's so important, grab your paper and your pencil, because this is where I'm going to share with you different tips and insights that will help you develop that self-accountability in a very simple way, okay? It doesn't have to be big. You know how a lot of people will go out and start a new thing and they're like, okay, day 1, I'm going to do all the workouts. I'm going to do all the eating well. I'm going to quit smoking, whatever. They do it all at once. If you want to do that, this is not the podcast for you. Okay. Yes, I can whip you into shape, but it's not going to be all at once, because that's just not how human behavior functions and it's not sustainable. Okay. So let's get that out of the way. These tips are going to be things that you can do simply, but it doesn't mean they're not going to require a little bit of work, okay? Now, I should preface this by saying some of these tips come from my book and my workbook. So if you don't have my book yet, number 1, you can download it for free on my website. You can get the audiobook. You guys have heard that a million times if you have listened to this podcast already. But you can also purchase the book if you like reading a physical copy. And I have my workbook on Amazon. So the difference between my book and my workbook is my regular book, The Accountability Code, Wake Up, Show Up. That is a good read if you just want to sit there and turn the pages. The reason why you would want to purchase the workbook is that I give you a space for every question that I ask so you can actually work through these lessons and begin to take action in a way that's not just in taking the information, but it's actually implementing it. So you can grab my workbook on Amazon. It's less than $25. You guys, it's huge. It's almost 500 pages and it's as big as a phone book if you guys are my age and you know what a phone book was. So it's pretty massive, but it's meant to be bite-sized pieces. All right, let's dive into the actionable strategies and insights that are going to help you master self-accountability. The first one is you have to set a clear goal. And I cannot stress this enough. This is the very reason why the accountability code starts with reflection, is because you have to take a step back and say, am I even wanting the real thing deep down? All right. This is the power of a SMART goal. Now, I did not invent SMART goals, but I do talk about it in depth in my book because this is so incredibly important because it's measurable, okay? A SMART goal is an acronym and it stands for specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, relevant or realistic, and then of course time bound. And I talk about this in my implementing chapter. The reason why SMART goals are so amazing is because they cover all the bases when it comes to you starting to reach a goal in your life, okay? Not only is a SMART goal super smart, again, I didn't make that up, but it's going to help you break down every piece of your goal and make sure that you have thought about each piece that goes into it, okay? Now, clarity is going to be very important for you to take action because, like I said, you need those wins. You need to say, dang, I am doing it, or I am on track, or I did do the thing that's going to help me do it. So in my book, the workbook on page 235, there's the whole breakdown of what a SMART goal is, and then I help you set a SMART goal as well. And then I want to also let you know that having clarity is what's going to prevent you from those distractions. Because if it's not in your SMART goal, then it's not going to help you achieve what you want. So there's another story in my book called single tasking. And that's a really interesting story because single tasking is definitely not a buzzword like multitasking is. So I encourage you to listen to that if you would like a perspective change on being chill, like doing one thing at a time. All right, second tip is create a structure. Now, for some of my friends who are ADD, ADHD, I have a lot of clients as well who are like, I need to do something different. I need to do it differently because it's just not the same for me. The cool thing about creating a structure, and like I said, the accountability code, is that you get to pick what it looks like for you. Having a routine or a schedule is really important in maintaining consistency, but notice that I did not say your routine needs to look like everybody else does. Let me tell you too about time blocking, okay? Time blocking, I feel like became really popular a couple years ago and everybody was putting journals out and bullet journals, all this stuff. And I heard about time blocking and I was like, what even is that? And it's essentially a plan where you say, okay, from this hour to this hour, this is what I'm working on. And from this hour for the next 3 hours, this is what I'm working on. And you don't do anything outside of that particular plan. Now, I think this can be a really great idea. However, it's not very realistic for somebody who has children or who is working a job and a side hustle or has to pick up kids from school for different reasons. Like, time blocking can be really good, but that doesn't mean that it's the catch-all perfect solution for everybody. Hey listeners, the message of waking up and showing up is yours for the taking. In fact, it's free. I've recorded my entire audiobook and I'd love for you to consume it between episodes. Head to marcybarker.com to get instant access to the accountability code Wake Up and Show Up. All right, let's jump back in. When it comes to creating a structure, I do have a story in my book. It's called Freedom. And we talk about how when you plan your day ahead of time, and even with the setbacks, even with the distractions, if you know ahead of time what those things might be, then you can, drop your shoulders, take a deep breath and say, this is all part of the plan. This is literally all part of the plan. And I remember working with a client years and years ago who wanted help eating better. And she just was like, meal planning is out of the question. I work full time. I get home from work, I pick up my kids from daycare, and then it's just too impossible to make food. And so we literally put Wendy's on her meal plan because she could say, hey, this is what I plan to do. I'm not going to feel guilty about it. It fits into what I need for my life right now. So even if you're listening to that and you're like, that doesn't make sense to put Wendy's on your meal plan, it actually does, because instead of her eating out 5 times a week, she was eating out half the time. And that was a successful thing for her in practicing self-accountability and creating a structure in her home that was going to make her more successful and ultimately more free. Now, creating a structure means that you are going to make less decisions about what you should do. Now, this is a very beautiful thing because decision fatigue is a real thing. Imagine your kids asking you the same question 15 times a day. Like, I probably don't even have to give you examples because you know what that feels like. And I tell my kids, didn't I already answer this question? I'm confused because I'm pretty sure we had this conversation. You not having a schedule for your day is the exact same thing. You're going to ask yourself 15 times, what am I going to do right now? What should I do next? What do I need to get done? What am I working on? And repeating those decisions over and over is a time waster, but most importantly to realize is that it's wasting your energy. And when you don't have energy, it's really hard to make good choices. So I encourage you, create a structure. Like, you going from nothing to writing something down is a very big win. So take that if you feel like you could improve in that area. Tip number 3 is creating small wins. Now, this is super important because, like I said, we're human and there can be a lot of days where we feel like we're just not moving the needle and things are not happening. But actually, if you're working on being accountable, then celebrating the good things that you're doing are going to go a very long way. Now, early on in my business, I heard somebody say that they were like 100% against toxic positivity. And I was like, what even is that? How can positivity be toxic? And she talked about how some people in her circle are just like, this is the best. This is awesome. Everything's great. Everything is going perfectly. And she's just like, no, that's not true. And I don't want to act like you because it seems like you're ignoring the problems, honestly. But when it comes to celebrating small wins, your ability to pull out the good in your actions is actually doing yourself a favor. Now, our brain is wired for 3 things. Number 1, to feel pleasure. Number 2, to stay safe or avoid pain. And number 3, to conserve energy. If you do anything that serves the brain, your brain is going to say, hey, let's do that again. We like that. That's why habits are so powerful, is because our body doesn't have to think to do them. We are automatic and we conserve energy, which we need to survive. Pleasure can come from you saying, dang girl, you did good. Or I got a lot done today, or I'm doing the best I can, or I finally got that thing done, or I figured it out, or I did good for us. All of those things will make you feel better. I promise you they will. And if you're one of those people who you're like, toxic positivity, I just challenge you to try being a little bit more positive than you are right now, because recognizing and celebrating milestones along the way are a really good way for you to recognize what you're capable of and your ability to be accountable to what you said you were going to do. Positivity really does reinforce self-accountability because you want more of it. Your body and your mind are going to find a way to work together to get you more of what you want. I cannot even stress this enough. I think we all have people in our life that could use some more positivity. And if you take a deep breath and assess yourself right now, I would like you to ask yourself, could I use more positivity in my life? And if the answer is yes, then start with yourself because it is so incredibly powerful. So if you're not sure exactly how to create or celebrate small wins, I would love you to ask a personal friend, somebody that knows you well, and they will help you point out all of the good things about you that you should be celebrating on a daily basis. The next tip that I want to talk about is practicing mindfulness and reflection. Now, you might hear the word accountability and think that mindfulness and reflection don't fit into that hustle and grind mentality. But if you've been following me for any amount of time or know anything about the accountability code, you know that reflection is at the beginning and feedback is at the end. The reason for that is because we will never ever change and improve if we don't take a step back and assess what our actions actually brought us. Mindfulness is something that I didn't do early on in my career of starting a business and having babies and all of that. Nobody ever taught me the power of being mindful. I just always thought, oh, that's the right answer, now go and do it. Oh, that's what's next in line, now go and do it. Oh, that's what I'm supposed to do next. Okay, I'm going to go and do it. I never really understood the value of pausing and saying, okay, let me assess what my actions brought me. And this actually bit me in the butt a couple years ago. I was working with a business coach and I had to make 24 videos. It was a lot. It was for my website. I had to do a lot of research for it. I had to write scripts and then I had to film all these videos. And I was just in such a hurry to get everything done. I was up against a deadline and I told my husband, you know what, let's just knock these videos out this weekend. We set up all of our filming equipment, the green screen, the camera, the teleprompter, and I knocked them all out. And I sent them over to my mentor and he was like, you did these wrong. Like all of the scripts are wrong because you missed this, this, and this. And I was like, man, if I just would have given myself a break and waited for my mentor's response about my scripts before filming the videos, I would have saved myself a whole entire day and a lot of stress. So trust me when I say that mindfulness and reflection and slowing down is actually a massive part of learning to be accountable to yourself. In my book, I do have a story called Anxiety Calming Habits. And the reason I put this in my workbook is because anxiety and depression are very, very prevalent. And they impact heavily how you feel about your ability to be accountable. If you are depressed, it's really hard to get out of bed and do anything. And if you are anxious, it's very hard to take the action steps that are aligned. So I want you to recognize that if you are dealing with almost a heightened sense of energy that affects your decision making, it's very important to say, hey, let me figure this out first before I move forward. And in the accountability code, the first step is reflection, like I've said, and then we go through humility and planning and implementing and commitment, and then we end up with feedback. Feedback is your ability to say, how did these things help me? And I would encourage you to make your feedback where you plug in mindfulness and reflection, because I feel like you're going to get the best answers after you've taken action and you can see what it actually did in your life. The other part of mindfulness and reflection is that in this relaxed state is where you get to say, how do I shift now? What did I learn now that I'm not in the height of the problem or the action, but I can sit back and observe what happened? And I'm probably saying this over and over and over again, and I can't stress to you how important it is to give yourself that break, because accountability is a lot of work. It is a lot of changing, and it is a lot of exertion in a way that you haven't experienced yet. And so at the tail end, after you've done your commitments, like seriously, give yourself a break and just observe and celebrate and relax. In my book, there is a story called Results Determine Shift. And it was where I recognized that in the reflection is where you get the choice to say, how am I changing my direction now? And how can I set myself up for the most effective reflection so I can start the whole accountability code process over again? Now, as you've listened to all of this, I hope more than anything you have a sense of peace, but also support. I don't want you to feel like improving your self-accountability has to be very drill sergeant-like. And this is the precise reason that I added loving before kicking the pants, because any sort of goal that you make to improve yourself needs to be done with love and compassion, because in this moment right now, you are an amazing person. And I think the gift of being human is that little light inside of us that says we can do better, we can be better, because there's more in store for us when we rise to the occasion. And at the end of the day, you have the power to do that. I think we all have been given that gift of the ability to accomplish it, and assessing yourself for self-accountability is a gift that I hope I have been successful in helping you understand. And if you listen to this and you're like, hey, I could use a little bit of help, I would love more than anything if you guys wanted to book a call with me and we can go deeper on those very specific things that are going to be worth your time and energy when it comes to being more accountable. So as you know, you can grab my audiobook if you haven't yet, The Accountability Code. I encourage you to get my workbook on Amazon if you haven't yet. It is called the Wake Up and Show Up Workbook. And also, I'm here for you. If you need that little boost of support and encouragement, or somebody celebrating your wins with you, I'm more than happy to talk and to help you move up and level up in a way that is easy and peaceful. Hey friends, I want to thank you for listening to this episode of Your Loving Kick in the Pants. If you got any value out of this episode, I would love for you to drop me a review or share with a friend what you learned. All right, I'll see you next Wednesday for Your Loving Kick in the Pants.